Wild Mouse roller coaster concepts can still be found all over the world. Some of them that are good, some of them that are not so good, but none that are as raucous, airtime filled and absolutely terrifying like the Wild Mouse at Blackpool Pleasure Beach used to be. In this video, I'll be taking a look back at the history of Blackpool Pleasure Beach's Wild Mouse roller coaster, the most recent wooden roller coaster to be built at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, but also the most recent to have been removed. We'll get to the removal subject later. Before the Wild Mouse was built at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, there was already many other roller coasters with the same name, both wooden and steel concepts, but it was the wooden Wild Mouse concept that took the interest of Blackpool Pleasure Beach in the late 1950s. Believed to be inspired by an in-house built wooden Wild Mouse at a place called Palisades Amusement Park located in New Jersey in the United States, Blackpool Pleasure Beach built their own in-house wooden Wild Mouse roller coaster in 1958. It's also said that inspiration was taken from similar German roller coaster concepts. The Wild Mouse was the first roller coaster to be built at Blackpool Pleasure Beach following the Second World War. The person credited for originally designing and building the Wild Mouse in-house at Blackpool Pleasure Beach is Frank Wright. The original layout of the Wild Mouse could be found on other roller coasters too, and can still be found on one remaining wooden Wild Mouse roller coaster that's still operational to this day at Luna Park in Sydney, Australia. That Wild Mouse opened in 1995. A few years on from its opening at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, the Wild Mouse was modified with designs bought from the Valair brothers, who were Canadian but had had success with similar coasters in the United States. Originally, the Wild Mouse started by turning right at the top of its lift hill straight into the S-bends. However, when modified, a third level was added which gave it more height. Following this, it would still turn right at the top of the lift hill, but instead of going into the S-bends, it went into a straight bit of track before turning right and going down a drop, back up into a right-sided turnaround before diving into another drop, which led back to the original layout starting with the S-bends. The Wild Mouse lived up to its billing. The ride cars were designed in such a way that on every corner it felt like you were going to miss the tight turn and keep going, but with that feeling came the raucousness of every tight corner. The Wild Mouse had refurbishments carried out on its track profile in 2003, as well as structural refurbishment carried out from the end of 2007 through to springtime in 2008. Truthfully, I don't remember the full extent of the work, but it was completely covered in scaffolding for a very long period of time. It reopened in time for the busy summer season, fully repainted and running excellently as always. In 2012, rumours started to emerge on coaster forums that the Wild Mouse was coming to the end of its time at Blackpool Pleasure Beach and would close permanently at the end of the 2012 season. It was difficult to ignore such rumours because ride removals had been common at the Pleasure Beach a few years earlier due to the difficulties caused by the double dip recession. Thankfully, the Wild Mouse wasn't removed at that time and continued to thrill riders of all ages. However, rumours never really stopped, up until the point of modernisations being done on the Wild Mouse's braking system in the 2016-17 closed season period. The Wild Mouse had magnetic brakes added, which meant it was no longer manually operated. This was seen as a positive because it showed that the ride would be modernised where needed to maintain its lifespan, and the rumours of removal had finally stopped. It was late to open in the 2017 season, but was open for most of the summer season before closing in August 2017. It was confirmed that the Wild Mouse would have further modifications made to it before returning in 2018, and signs of work on it were starting to be seen towards the end of the 2017 season, with additional restraints appearing to be added to some of the cars. It looked as if it was going to be altered so that both riders would now have a seatbelt rather than just one rider having a seatbelt across the front of them, even when there was two riders. In January 2018, following photos on social media, it was confirmed by Blackpool Pleasure Beach that the Wild Mouse had been removed. The following statement was made: "After very careful consideration and planning, our current winter work programme has seen a permanent closure and dismantling of the Wild Mouse and the removal of the facade of the former Trauma Towers attraction. This will create an area for future exciting developments." Unquote. It remains to be seen what will happen in this area of Blackpool Pleasure Beach in the future. What would you like to see added in this space? Currently, the Wild Mouse's area is being used as an events and entertainment hub for things like Oktoberfest. It remains to be seen if this will be long-term use of the space. In terms of the removal, I respect that it is still considered to be quite controversial, and I want to share some thoughts on it. When a park considers the future of an attraction which is being considered for removal, many things have to be taken into account, such as the age of the ride, maintenance demands which sometimes may include unforeseen changes being required at short notice to satisfy new health and safety requirements, or additional maintenance work needed that perhaps hadn't been needed a few months earlier. There's other things like insurance costs, rider throughput, and the actual popularity of the ride. Popularity can't always be measured by a ride's queue line. I wasn't really surprised when the removal had happened. This day had been rumoured to come around for at least 6 years. I was sad, but just not surprised. I'm just glad it wasn't removed in 2012. I'm sure Blackpool Pleasure Beach would have done a last rides day if that had been possible. Similar was done for the log flume on its final day, but unfortunately when the Mouse closed in August 2017, it wasn't going to reopen before all of the additional changes had been made, and those changes hadn't been made when the announcement came around. The Wild Mouse decision wasn't an easy one and was an out-of-season decision which meant a last riders day was impossible to arrange for the Pleasure Beach. A bit more opinionated than the usual history videos here on Pleasure Beach Experience YouTube, but that concludes my look at the history of the Wild Mouse at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. What's your favourite Wild Mouse memory at the Pleasure Beach? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. And before you go, please give this video a like. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon in the next Pleasure Beach Experience video.